Hi, and welcome to AC7WH Backyard Ham Radio. Check out my latest antenna setup. This is going to be not very rehearsed, but I just want you to see exactly how I have things set up. So I've got the coax there coming through the bedroom window, stuffed off to hopefully keep the bugs out. I don't want to drill any holes in the wall yet. All right. So, before I get over to the antenna, I'm going to show you how I have the power set up. So I'm running a heavy-duty extension cord about as short as I could to the nearest 20 amp socket for the outlet here. That is literally the nearest 20 amp outlet that I have that I am personally aware of, although I may research further and change some things up there. But in any case, I have this so that I can run my Palstar LA1K amplifier. The 220 volt circuit is just too far away for me. It's just not practical to have that. So even though that has its advantages with using this amplifier, it's better in my case to go ahead and use the 110, 120 volt outlet. And besides, I only run it at around 800 watts. That's what I aim for. So that's what works for me. Okay, there's a view looking out. Now the fence line is where my property ends. So I got creative. I run my LMR 400 coax through here. I try to keep the coax and the antenna about as far away from the extension cord, and bear in mind there is also wiring I'm avoiding. So there's wiring that goes through this support beam, hence where the outlet is, and then there's wiring up to that fan. There's control wiring over there on that beam, and another outlet over on that beam. So lots of different wiring spots. And when I first moved here, I have a feeling I was wasting a lot of power going through the wiring for the electrical system because the antenna was too close to that. The old antenna I was using, a 25-foot Chameleon. Nice antenna, but this works better for what I want to do. Okay, so the coax comes down through here. I haven't fully finalized by any means what I'm doing with the antenna here, but I did actually shorten it compared to what I had. I had originally, with this antenna wire in this location, I had 50 feet running up to this POTA33 heavy-duty mast, carbon fiber mast. And that 50 feet was a little bit too long, so it was having to really stretch out here. You can look on my QRZ page, qrz.com, to see more. But I just had too much excess. It was hard to keep it off the ground because there's not a lot of room here on the property for long antenna wires. So what I did is I trimmed it, so now instead of 50 feet, it's about 40 feet. So that mast is 33 feet high, then the antenna slopes down a little bit and then goes over these two patio chairs. Thankfully they are plastic, so essentially they are insulators, so that helps with what I'm trying to accomplish here. Then I used to have an L-shape antenna, basically like a vertical L with random wires and a bit of a slope to it. So it was a combination of a sloper, a vertical L, and a random wire antenna. I don't know if you hear that bird chirping over there in that tree, but it's a cool sound. Anyhow, so I have my Palomar Engineers Unun. You may have seen that in my previous video. But this goes over here for my longest radial. This one is now 40 feet instead of 50. It's a little easier to deal with, and by trimming this wire without having to buy more wire or scrounge up some other wire that's around here, I now have more radial wire. So I basically just have the radial secured in there. There's lots of ways to do this, I know. I could use more insulators and all of that, but this works for me for now. So I took the extra 10 feet or so off of the one radial, the horizontal part of the L antenna, if you will, and I added in an extra radial through here. That's going in approximately the westerly direction. The long radial is going approximately in the easterly direction. The antenna is up here, and you know I may have my directions off. There's another bird flying. Anyway, but in any case, I've got the antenna there and another radial out this way. So they aren't very long radials. These two are about 10 feet each. So one going up at that angle, one going over at that angle. Nice thing is these can be easily adjusted. Got the antenna wire going out that way, and then the long radial out that way. So to rehash here, we've got a 40-foot radial, a 40-foot sloping vertical on the carbon fiber mast, and then two 10-foot radials. Now, I have an antenna tuner, the HF Auto antenna tuner by Palstar. I really like their items, the products that they put out. They've been really fantastic, and I'm looking forward to testing with them even more. But in any case, that antenna tuner should help me tune this up well. Based on my earlier testing with the different length, it worked out very well, although I wasn't able to tune up, at least not easily, on 10 meters. But now that the antenna is shorter, it may do better with that higher frequency, shorter wavelength. All right, so with that, I'm going to show you one other thing here. You may have seen it in a previous video of mine, but I have a set of 10 of these RF chokes. They just snap on. I've got one there for the power outlet, and then for the power supply and the antenna tuner and the amplifier and the ICOM IC7300 transceiver. All of those things have those little snap-on RF chokes by Palomar engineers, the same company that made the Unun that I have down there on that chair near the shed. So anyhow, you can kind of see the layout there. So it looks like a little metal spider web kind of, but that should help me. I figure 3 radials are better than 1 from what I know and what I've studied. And now the antenna is more of an ideal length, especially since the lowest frequency I typically make QSOs on is going to be the 14 megahertz 20 meter band. If I was going more for 40 meters, which I would use occasionally, or the 75 voice or 80 meter band, or the 160 meter band, which I've experimented with a little bit, if I were to do that on a regular basis, then maybe I would want to get a longer antenna. But as you can see, there's not an awful lot of extra room through here. So I'm going to give you one other look. You may hear a vehicle driving on some gravel over there to my left. So if you hear some noise, that's what it is. But here's the bottom of the deck, and then the fence line is right there. So right there is the fence. So as you can see, there's not much room that way. I would say maybe about 6 feet from the bottom of the deck over to the fence. And then I do have some distance here to the end of the property there. And then there's the other part of the deck and the house. Now this metal here on the deck may actually help to reflect the signal and work to my benefit. But then over here we've got the antenna, the other part of the house, and so forth, other part of the deck, and then the shed, and then the end of the property is right there where that Japanese maple tree is. So pretty tight there near the shed, and then over to here there's the other corner. So as you can see, there's not a ton of room. The biggest open space I would say that I have is either going to be here or over on that other side over there. So this works out great for me because I can run the coax right out through my window and up to the antenna. Alrighty, well, thanks for taking this little tour with me. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and 73.